where it's a call all across Avestan to come help this situation in Sarkoris with all of these demons just piling out everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem gestures wildly at...
Yes.
The situation.
Concern.
Hey there, welcome to the Tabletop Travel Guide, the podcast where we explore fictional worlds and civilizations right from the comfort of our own table. I'm Tyler, and this week in my Monday group, we did a side quest because there were only 3 people. And I had one of my players confront the humanity of orcs.
Oh.
The humanity of orcs.
Yeah, he's an elf who, his backstory, he really hated orcs. So I had them run into some orcs that were kind of fighting and struggling against a black dragon. So they stepped in to help and did some stuff. So, yeah.
And learned that orcs are people too.
Orcs are people too. It also helped that he, may or may not have killed one of the parents of one of the orc children previously.
You just hand wave that.
Kind of accidental, but kind of on
Exactly.
purpose. Yeah, it's fine.
Accidental.
Character growth.
Yeah.
Yes. Learning from our mistakes.
There we go.
Well, I'm Ryan. Last week, I didn't play Pathfinder, but I did play through the first 2 missions of Rangers of Shadowdeep, which was a lot of fun.
What type of game is that?
It's a tabletop. It's a solo / co-op tabletop game. So we found a village attacked by zombies,
Nice.
and then we figured out those zombies were created by evil spiders, and then we attacked a bridge crossing guarded by gnolls, and found out the gnolls were commanded by an evil dark knight who was in a tower, and then we killed that dark knight. It was great. We won.
Nice.
So I'm Sam, and this week I did not get to play any Pathfinder because I was out of town. But last week I got to do 1 session with one of my groups, and that was just nice because one of our players who hasn't been there in a while got to come back, and she'd missed a few sessions, so we got to do a really ridiculous recap.
Perfect.
On here's all of the random things that have happened since the last time you were here, and it was a lot of things that had happened.
She's like, what level are we? And we're like, we leveled up since you've been gone. We are 700 experience more.
Yeah. So it was just nice to have the whole group together. I don't remember if we did anything super notable. They're prepping for the kind of finale of their chapter.
Yeah.
So it was more tying up the loose ends, but it's still good to have everybody in the building.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So before we dive into things we misspoke, which we do have something, I wanted to talk about our Patreon. Patreon. So I mentioned it at the end of our Good Evening Golarion episode that we have a Patreon now. Like I said in that episode, if you listen to it, we are not here to become podcast millionaires. We know what we are about and what our lane is, but we do have some upkeep costs to running the show. So if you're able and willing to support, that's great. Otherwise, totally cool. Just hanging out and listening. We appreciate all you coming on this journey with us.
It's also officially a competition at my house now because my wife is baking sourdough bread and that also has a lot of startup cost apparently to get the starter going. And
wait, is she selling the bread?
No, but the running joke now is that she's going to spend more money making sourdough bread than the podcast. So this is my new challenge. Can I make enough money?
Please support us so we can beat Jess's sourdough habit.
The weekly cost of sourdough bread creation.
We're going to have a spreadsheet calculator.
Can I just volunteer to eat the bread? That sounds like
It's
way
literally
I can contribute.
We have to make, oh my gosh, I guess sourdough bread grows so quickly, the starter, that you need to make a loaf every week.
Oh,
What?
man.
Or throw away starter.
Okay, well, we're here for it.
Yeah, so lots of bread incoming.
Ooh.
Fair. So one thing to note as well, we're still going to be releasing all of our content like normal. So we're not going to be putting anything behind a paywall. We are putting some of our edited content out there and some things we chat about pre and post show and some of the stuff that gets cut from our episodes that will make it onto the Patreon page. That doesn't necessarily have a specific topic. We in our spoiler guide episode that dropped at this thing, we had 45 minutes of just kind of chatting.
It's the opposite of a focused conversation.
Yeah, but we were, chatting about other TTRPGs and some adventure paths and just some random stuff. So, if you are interested in that, there is a tier where you can support us to get that content. So yeah, if you want to support us, you can go to our website. We have a link to our Patreon from there. You can also search on Patreon itself, and I think we are under Tabletop Travel Guide Podcast. So feel free to head out there if you want. But with that, our favorite segment, Things We Misspoke.
Things I misspoke. I think I actually did okay.
Yeah.
And sorry my voice sounds awful. We had a fire at my work, so I just have a little bit of smoke inhalation damage to my lungs. It's not a big deal.
No big deal.
This is fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It'll heal hopefully by next episode. But I messed up. I think I called it Brightburn as the mold, and it's Blightburn. Very minor, but those are two different words, and I did mess that up. So that is the big one that I noticed.
Yeah.
Going back through.
In the Darklands episode.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, Samantha.
Hello. So we are off to fun new places today. Just to run through what resources I used at the top so that I don't forget to do it at the end, because this one took me to a lot of different books. We went through the Lost Omens World Guide, Inner Sea World Guide, the Worldwound, which is a campaign setting, and Wrath of the Righteous, the adventure path, to pull in the information for this. So where are we going that we need all of this new information? We are going to the Broken Lands.
Yeah. New
So we're
segment.
in a new section of Avestan. The Broken Lands are east of the Saga Lands, northeast of Lake Incarthen, if we use Lake Incarthen as our center point in Avestan, which is for me the easiest way to look at it.
It is.
So we're going to look at that kind of northeast chunk. This land is full of scattered cities, not really empires, and is typically not as prestigious when it comes to religious, artistic type of institutions. These lands are more focused on survival. However, there's some bonuses with kind of that more focus on survival and lack of institution. We also have a lack of social rigidity and inequality. So that's nice. People can kind of live together a little bit better here.
Okay.
Overall, looking at the Broken Lands, there's more of a focus on food and survival. And some of these countries are a little bit better equipped to provide it than others. So we do have kind of that mindset of we are kind of living by trade and really carving out existence here. It's not going to be quite as extreme as the realm of the Mammoth Lords or Irison, where it's oh no, it's winter and this is unfortunate.
Sure.
But it's a little bit more of a harder place to live than some of our southern countries in Avestan.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So in the Broken Lands, we are going to start with the northern and westernmost chunk of the Broken Lands, which is Sarkoris and Mendev.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Sarkoris and Mendev together because you really can't talk about them apart, and there's not going to be enough history if you separate them.
Yeah.
So Mendev is kind of our country that has more going on present day. So it is the bigger country that we're looking at, but they are tied together. So we're going to talk about their history together a little bit, and then you'll hear about kind of how they end up.
Okay.
But some prehistory as we get into the actual plot points. Up until the 4600s, so relatively recently, Sarkoris and Mendev are neighboring nations. They've got some cities, some settlements, but again, they're not as technologically or culturally advanced as some of the southern nations.
Okay, so Sarkoris is a country.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
yeah, because that was one of the Kelid tribes.
Yeah.
Right, because they had the Sarkorians.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've got Kelids here. We've got some more structured civilization too. It's not completely nomadic for everybody. We have cities, we have places where people live. We're just not in that empire building part of their history.
Sure.
So that's where we're at up until 4600s. Now there's going to be an event here that's going to shake everything up a little bit.
I wonder what that event could be early in the 4600s.
Well, so before we talk about what exactly that event is, we have to talk about the instigator of said event, and it is Discari, who is the demon lord of infestation and locusts.
Everybody's favorite things.
Everyone's favorite plagues.
Everyone's favorite plagues.
Sure.
Top 10 plagues.
Gross. Okay, so Discari has been interested in Sarkoris since he discovered that there's this weird thinness in the planar barrier between Sarkoris and his abyssal realm.
Okay.
Sure.
So, it's one of those, the boundaries between these places is not quite as sturdy as it is elsewhere. So he's able to use this thinness to kind of grow his cult. They build a lot of secret temples in the North Mounds, which is an area in central Sarkoris. And unfortunately, part of the problem here is they're so insidious with it that not very many Sarkorians realize that they are worshiping anything different than what they had been before.
Oh, dang.
Oh, it's like one of many gods. We've entered
And this one's
them.
just kind of snuck in.
They infiltrate into some of the society that's already built up here.
Sure, okay.
To grow the worship. So in 4600, there is a half succubus witch. Her name is Arilu Vorlesh.
I think Arilu?
Arilu?
Arilu.
Arilu Vorlesh?
Yeah.
I like Arilu. That sounds good. So she's on the Golarion side of the planar weirdness, right? So she has also discovered that thinness. And in this, she ends up pledging her loyalty to Discari. And as we move through the conflict that ends up happening in this area, she remains a powerful denizen here and will show up in Wrath of the Righteous. So this is where she starts intersecting the story and growing power.
How do you realize this?
That there's the thinness.
Yeah, what research?
So
I'm sure this is not really specced out anywhere, but is there an instrument that's ooh?
You know how when you're
I'm sensing some thinness.
You know how when you're just
worlds.
walking around and you just step on a board that's a little loose, and you're like, huh, I didn't think that board was loose. That's exactly how it did.
So there's no evidence for this, but how I would picture it in my head is if you are some sort of magic user and you're pulling on magics that are coming from other places, right? So we think about the abyssal realm, we think about demons, we think about the powers that people are pulling from those places. So my assumption is if you are in a land where things are not as tightly regimented as they are in other places, your magic might behave different. So does she discover that some of my stuff works better here? Things that are pulling from those magic schools that are going to be more aligned with demons and abyssal. Okay, why is that happening? Now I'm going to look into it. Or am I hearing things or seeing things or being called by whatever this power is that's kind of beyond that thinner veil?
Yeah, I tried to summon an air elemental and a demon showed up.
Right, yeah, I don't know. Weird things.
Yeah.
Air elementals have changed a lot since I last summoned one.
Yeah, that makes sense. That seems very reasonable.
Since you're kind of in tune,
Yeah, so she gets involved with this. And then in 4601, the last prince of Mendev enters Sarkoris on a diplomatic mission and mysteriously dies or is missing, presumed dead. So there's some weirdness, right? The world is noticing there's some weirdness in this area. So the Prince of Mendev is cool, I'm going to pop over, we're going to check it out, see what's going on. But he does not come back.
Yeah.
This turns into a little bit of a folk legend. There is now a song called The Ballad of Prince Zakar, and a legend about the last Prince of Mendev who dies in the ruins of Sarkoris trying to fight his way to what becomes the Worldwound.
Kind of love that.
That's cool.
Kind of love that.
So the real world history of this, or the part that we know for sure, is that after his death disappearance, his eldest daughter, Galfrey, is crowned the Princess of Mendev.
Ooh.
And she's a paladin of Erodin.
Okay.
Which is important because then in 4606, Firstly, we have the death of Aroden, which then leads into Daskari, who has a history of dislike for Aroden already.
Okay.
He's like, well, cool, that dude's gone. And he opens the Worldwound, which is an abyssal rift that opens in central Sarkoris. And it's blighting the land. Demons are spilling out. It's just wrecking this country.
So that is just interesting then. We talk about it in the spoiler guide, but
sure.
we kind of talked, we're a little bit out of order on this one, but we did mention how we weren't exactly sure what came first, the thinness or Aroden's death, but the fact that Daskari kind of had the, like, already knew the weakness was there and then took advantage of the death. That's
right.
I don't know. That's
like had a plan ready.
Yeah.
And then executed as like, oh, now's my moment. Now's my chance. Yeah.
So in 4606, so Galfrey, remembering that our princess here has been a paladin of Aroden, she then becomes a paladin of Iomade.
Sure, the inheritor.
The inheritor, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then from here on out, as these events unfold with the Worldwound, she becomes known as the Crusader Queen.
That's kind of cool.
It is. Now, remember, she's only been in power for 5 years, too.
Right.
So she's not been like a leader a super long time before this really terrible thing happens. So the thing that I think is very cool about her is that, okay, this is a person who's been in charge of like a pretty chill country for 5 years. Your god dies that you are connected to deifically, right?
Well, and she would lose all of her paladin abilities too, yeah.
So she's able to not only find something else to get that deific power from, right? But then she rises up as the face of the crusade, the first Mendevian crusade that happens in 4622, where it's a call all across Avestan to come help this situation in Sarkoris with all of these demons just piling out everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem gestures wildly at...
Yes.
The situation.
Concern.
We have a situation in Sarkoris. What is it? Don't worry about it.
So the crusade is organized by the Church of Iomade.
Makes sense.
Right.
Which makes sense. So they're rallying all of these heroes from across Avestan to deal with this issue. And at first, they seem successful in this crusade. They're able to check the hordes, they're able to push them back, and for a brief period of time, this seems to be working well.
Nice.
Everything's going great.
So then slight sidebar, because the explanation of this area is going to be a lot of things about crusades, but there were just some really fun, like, nuggets that I found.
Ooh, I love nuggets.
They don't really have to tie into the main plot, but there's just some cool things that come out of all of this, like, war and conflict. So one of those things is the Ice Rift Castle.
Ooh.
So during the First Crusade, Crusaders begin construction on a fortress. It's way far to the north in the Sarkoris Mendev area.
Yeah.
It's near the crown of the world.
Okay.
And the goal is that it's going to like command the northern frontier here. However, it ends up abandoned when it's only partially complete, as it's decided that it'd be really difficult to resupply it and reinforce it since it's so far up there and it's cold and crappy.
They did not have a logistics officer.
A featureless tundra.
So they arrange for like the workers and the garrison and everybody to come home. But they send crusaders up to escort them. But when those crusaders get there, they discover that all of those people have been slaughtered.
Ooh.
Great.
And their hearts torn out. But there's no evidence of it being demonic. So the native Mendevians who live here blame the slaughter on a legendary Wendigo.
The Wendigo.
The Wendigo.
And then the site is formally announced cursed, and it's stricken from Crusader records. But there's still rumors of what weirdness lurks within.
That'd be a cool, like, one-shot
Right?
exploring the Ice Rift.
I kind of love the bureaucratic decision of like, well, sir, all of them are dead, and all their hearts are ripped out. Strike it from the record. Never happened.
Nope.
This conversation never happened. What are you doing Tuesday?
Lift up that rug, sweep that under, move on.
Goodbye.
Yeah, so I also thought, I was like, man, that would just be like a cool little like, we're going to go explore the weird stuff. So anyway, back to the Crusades. So we have that first crusade. They seem to be doing okay. However, in 4638, the demon horde has been biding their time to assemble a massive force.
Of course they have.
That then renews that onslaught against the Crusades. The invasion is disastrous. The city of Dresden, which is in Sarkoris, falls to the horde. It's really, really bad.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where we're hitting the end of that first crusade. Like, we thought it was going fine, and then they just get, like, run over. And that's crusade number 1.
That sucks to just have the end of it, because it sounds like, oh, the first crusade did it. We're good. Just to end it in, like, oh, what happened? The city fell? That's not great.
So the interesting thing about this defeat, so Queen Golfrey, she's the one that calls for a retreat from Sarkoris as this is happening, which at the time, everyone is very scandalized by, right? Like, you don't just retreat a crusade. However, this does set them up for a better time in the second crusade. So ultimately, this ends up being a smart decision. But at the time, everyone's like, wait, what?
Yeah, strategically good, but like politically unpopular.
So then from here, they call up the second crusade. Now, what the second crusade focuses on is like, what are some other defensive things that we can do? So they establish ward stones, which are magical objects that are used as a magical defense that contains the demons and the blight to stop everything from spreading further.
Okay.
Sure.
The challenge is the stones have to be maintained with a lot of prayer and ritual, and they're constant points of attack by the demons and their servants.
Makes sense.
But they're able to contain this so that it does not spread any farther.
Oh, okay.
At this point, so we've done 2 crusades, right? So Queen Golfrey is a human. The interesting thing that starts to happen here, the Church of Iomedae ends up paying for 2 sun orchid elixirs for Queen Golfrey to maintain her youth so she can keep leading the crusades.
Oh, dang.
That's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Because they think it's too, like, tumultuous to bring in a new leader.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
They basically pay for her to live longer so that she can keep doing this.
That's, on one hand, you're like, that feels kind of problematic. On the other hand, I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, she's now like the almost living embodiment of the crusade.
Because this, and then, I don't think we've talked about the Sun Orchid elixirs.
No, definitely not.
They're basically elixirs of youth, like kind of the fountain of youth that come out of, what's the country?
Is it, it's not Osiren.
No, it's the one next to it.
The one that I can never remember the name of.
Yeah. Yeah, they're basically elixirs of like kind of eternal life or elixirs of youth.
Yes. So if you're wondering how this woman who came to power in 4601 is still busting out crusades, that is why.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you told me while you're before this, you're like, oh yeah, she's still around. I'm like, oh yeah, she must be an elf. But yeah, it's like human. Nope.
Yeah. Craziness. So that leads us into the third crusade, which is called in 4665. So again, this woman has been fighting crusades for 65 years. Well, 60 years because they didn't start until 06. But yeah, insanity, right? So the third crusade goes a little bit off the rails. They get off track with fighting between factions due to fiendish efforts to sow paranoia and discord to disrupt the effectiveness of the crusade.
Oh.
So this is the demons are like, well, you trapped us in this area, so what else can we do to make you ineffectual? So then they're changing their tactics to try to dismantle the Crusades from within instead of just in straight up outright combat.
Well, and the Crusades are like a coalition, right? Like there's not enough people in Mendev to constantly fight these wars. So it's a lot of other people, right?
Yeah, so you have all these different groups coming from different places, and then you've got like this demon influence, like pitting them against each other. So it's really difficult for this particular crusade to be effective. The other thing that happens during this crusade, which is mirrored in real life when we think about religious crusades in the real world,
Right.
the Crusades Inquisitors did not trust the native religious practices of the Kelids.
Oh, the cowards.
No, Kelids.
They tend toward like a more animist theology, which if you're not familiar with what animist theology is, that's like the idea that like plants and objects and everything has a soul and we're connected, and which for the Crusader Inquisitors did not sound like appropriate religious practice.
Right.
So a lot of the Third Crusade ends up focused on purifying the inhabitants of the area rather than fighting the actual problem.
You can't do a crusade without doing an exploration.
Yeah.
In all sorts of terrible ways. So that's the Third Crusade, unfortunately.
So the Third Crusade is basically nothing on the strategic sense happens.
Correct.
Demons did well.
But didn't get any land. They did well, but they didn't.
Demons did their thing. We did our thing. We just stared at each other.
Yeah.
Overall, not great. So then, 4692, we're going to hit the fourth Mendevian Crusade. They are called in specifically because of the rise of the Baelor demon Koremzada.
That sounds good.
Think.
Ramzadeh? Yeah. Ramzadeh.
Sure. That's a lot of letters.
Anyway, he is a Baelor demon that is in the city of Iz in Sarkoris that has been overrun by demons. He is able to destroy one of the ward stones, which again, that's what's keeping all of the demons in this area.
Right.
So destroying that stone allows the demons to move into Mendev again. In this time period, we have this group of crusaders called the Order of the Heralds, that they are really in charge of the purges in the crusade. So their actions end up kind of forcing a stalemate in between the demons and the crusaders. So the demons are forced to retreat. So we get that movement pushed back that was challenged by the destroyed Wardstone. However, it's a lot of effort, and then the forces of Mendev can't really fight further because they are so depleted and exhausted.
Right.
Yeah.
They can't project outside of Mendev. Yeah.
So we're able to push it back, but we're not able to like gain any like positive ground.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
There. So that's the Fourth Crusade. So then in 4718, we get the Fifth Crusade, and this is what's detailed out in Wrath of the Righteous, the Adventure Path. So we'll just kind of like high level pull out the details from here.
Yeah. We'll talk more about it in the spoiler guide, but unlike other adventure paths, which we are good with spoiling like all of it, since this one is a relatively new video game, so people might have played it. We want to do a spoiler guide just so in case you weren't playing through it right now and you're like, let's talk lore, and we're like, they did what?
So the interesting thing to note as we're moving into that Fifth Crusade, so I want you to remember back that like Queen Galfrey, now 2 elixirs of youth into this, has been fighting this war for 100 years.
Oh my gosh.
Exhausting.
She's pretty much at the point where she's like, look, this is going to end one way or the other for me. Like either we're ending the war or like I'm going out swinging.
Yeah.
I wake up with a migraine every morning. I'm sick of this.
So her motivations are a little bit different here, but then the adventure path, kind of, again, that high level. So we have this band of heroes that is going after the demon lord Dascari with the goal of sealing the Worldwound.
Yeah.
They do that, and the Fifth Mendevian Crusade is victorious.
Yay!
Ooh.
So obviously there's a lot more details in how they do all of that, but that's the adventure path.
They do it.
So now we have a lot of exhausted and traumatized veterans hanging out in Mendev. We have gotten the problem under control. However, now we have all of these different ripples and things that we're going to have to continue to contend with.
Mm-hmm.
There's some initial efforts to reclaim the Sarkoris Scar, which is what we are calling what the Worldwound was. But it becomes apparent pretty quickly that cities lost to the Worldwound are going to be too corrupted to salvage.
Right.
So they end up raising Starasta, Underan, and Iz. After they like go in and they try to see if they can do anything with them, they're like, nope, we just got to burn it all down.
Yeah.
Oh.
So then in 4719, the Whispering Tyrant breaks free, and we haven't talked tons about him, and I won't talk tons about him here, but he's a bad, bad lich. Okay. So now we have the remaining holy champions and crusaders that are in Mendev leaving to ride south to confront him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we're seeing what was left over of these like armies and crusaders are now exiting the country, including Queen Galfrey, who becomes Iomede's herald
Oh.
Okay, yeah.
at this point, and then she's leading the assault against the Whispering Tyrant.
Dang, can't she catch a break?
Well, so I guess like she's a herald now. I'm like, is she still human at this point?
No,
or
you're,
is she...
you're a demigod at that
Yeah,
point.
so
You're like a
she's-
planar being.
Yeah, so I feel like at that point she's like, okay, I'm not a human. I maybe have regained some like deific something or other, and she gets to fight a different baddie.
But heralds can die. Like very,
Heralds can
Yes,
die.
that's true.
very clearly. Like heralds die. I don't want to say all the time, but
Well,
it's not insignificant the number of heralds that die in Pathfinder lore.
it's not insignificant the number of heralds specifically tied to Aerodin die.
yeah.
Like the Venn diagram of heralds who have died and heralds who have followed Aerodin might be a circle.
It's probably close. Yeah.
So maybe don't pick that one.
Don't pick Aerodin.
We have a new job opening.
So she is technically still the Queen of Mendev. However, as she's going to lead to go handle this other thing, she leaves a chancellor in charge of Mendev.
Okay.
And that chancellor is Irahai, who is a child of two crusaders who became a crusader herself. So she's
Okay.
been involved in the area, like knows all the things going on. So then she's going to take control of the country.
Okay. And like function. Yeah. Just
Functional
everything.
rulership
Yeah,
here. So that's all the fun, like, weird plot
Mhm.
history that kind of brings us up to what Mendev and Sarkoris are currently.
Yeah. Okay.
So in this kind of present post-Crusade
Yeah.
era, the Crusaders and all of the industry that's created by war have left, which leaves Mendev with only its own resources.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we can kind of look at like real life history, right? Like when war stops and there's all these things that were built up to build that up,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a void here with, okay, how do we function? How do we use resources? How do we build things up again?
Transition from wartime economy.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So also, the sealing of the Worldwound doesn't eliminate the demons already on Golarion.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so Mendev is still, like, pretty crucial as far as how do we get rid of the demons that are left. So it ends up still being a staging ground for, like, all of those, you know, paladins and other
Mhm.
champions who are like, I'm gonna fight all the demons until every last one is gone.
Sure.
So Mendev is still kind of hosting that effort, but it's not as imminent as
Yeah.
it has been. And we also have like these little areas around Mendev that also have their own problems supernaturally, right? So we talk about Ice Rift, like, still some weird stuff going on there. We're going to talk a little bit about the Ostrovian Forest, which is the big forest in Mendev that also has some weird stuff going on. So there's still some odd things happening here, even if we don't consider the demons.
Yeah.
Huh.
So the Kelids, our friends, the Kelids,
Hey, Kelids.
from the tribes of Sarkoris, they are returning to try to reclaim their homeland. Some of the Crusaders, who maybe are hoping to atone for the cruelties inflicted by their crazy counterparts,
Sure.
have sworn to help them. So that's a positive move.
Sorry about the zealots.
Yeah,
You wanna-
sorry about these crazy people.
Here's some wheat.
Inquisition.
So if we look specifically at Sarkoris, there is maybe small groups, but there are groups of Crusaders, Kelids, that are working to restore it. Their only permanent outpost right now is a really small town called Gundrun,
Gundren. Yeah.
Gundren.
which they've built into like it's walled and warded and like stockpiled. They're not really focused on rebuilding cities here, but they're more focused on like restoring the wildlands.
Oh, that's kind of
which
cool.
is nice.
Yeah.
There's a mystical city called Dying Light that has some old druidic things going on. There's the Shutterwood. Those are kind of where they're focused.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of those places are still like kind of corrupted lands like that were really impacted by like the blight. So they're focused on how can we help these kind of two areas, which
Okay.
is where they're focused
Okay.
rather than trying to like build up big cities.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So then just kind of some other places in Mendev that are of note that I thought were interesting that exist and I think help kind of round out the lore of what this country is right now. So the Ostrovian Forest, which I mentioned, this is in southern Mendev. Historically, like, we're getting timber here, we're getting game. However, the forest gets a bad rep during the First Crusade.
Bad rep?
So what happens is there's a huntsman from Andoran. His name is Hern Vilhauer.
Cool.
Hern Vilhauer.
He gets mortally injured while he's hunting a sacred stag in the Druid Groves.
Okay, well, rule number 1, you don't shoot the sacred white stags.
Right? Come on.
Right.
Especially in the Druid Groves, jeez. So anyway, the Druids, who at this point are currently losing territory due to the influx of Crusaders,
Yeah.
they're going to use Hern as a tool for their revenge.
Uh-oh.
So they hang him from an ancient oak tree and put upon him the curse of the Winterthorn, which turns him into a stag-horned avenging spirit. It's only going to go well, right?
Yes.
So this really messes him up, right? So like,
rightfully so.
So like we got druid magic, but he hates the druids because they've done this to him. He hates his companions for leaving him to die in the forest.
Oh boy.
So he just gets corrupted to all hell, right? So Hern naturally goes after the druids who created him as his first victims.
What are we going to learn?
Right?
When are we going to learn this lesson?
He ends up forgetting everything but his name, how angry he is, and how much he wants to hunt.
Well,
So in the following years, he passes down this curse to a race of stag-crowned hunters who live in the forest. They all go by the title of Herns. And when he eventually does die, they bury him at the foot of the oak tree, where he was originally transformed.
yeah.
But now travelers in the forest stay very far away from Hern's Oak because we've got all these crazy dark hunter, half staggy people running around doing a little murdery stuff. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay away from that.
Yeah, that does not sound fun.
that's a fun part of the forest.
Cool.
In more like chill places is a location of note. We have the Egolsi River, which is going to be the border of Mendev with Numeria. So this is where we get like all of the water and the fisheries. And it leads into the capital, which is Nerosian.
Nerosian.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is our capital city in Mendev. It's pretty far south. Interestingly, and this is just like a fun architectural thing that I thought was cool, the city's laid out in a diamond pattern because of where the Egolsi River and the Selen River, and the Selen River is really important to the river kingdoms when we get there, where they meet is at like a point. So they build the city out in a diamond pattern. And it's called the Diamond of the North.
Oh, that's
which
cool.
is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a hugely fortified city. So it's like built to slow down invaders should they invade here, which is cool. There's
Makes
lots
sense.
of towers. They have all of those fun places to shoot people from tiny windows.
Nice.
Right.
And their roofs are specifically built to like get rid of snowfall and also to prevent things that might try to fly and murder you from being able to land easily.
Nice.
So great job, everybody. The other kind of major city of note is, I keep wanting to call it Edge because of mixing up letters, but that's not what it is. It's Eged.
Again.
Again.
It looks. I agree. It looks like Edge, though.
E-G-E-D. Yeah, you say it wrong. But anyway, so it's a port city. It's also in the southeast, but it's kind of like the other side of the country from the capital. It is on the Lake of Mists and Veils, and this is like the major trade hub that Mendev has. So this is where they're going to trade a lot with Brevoy, which has a lot more resources and like food things because they have better farmland.
Fair.
So that's where we're going to get a lot of that. Just a fun fact, the Lake of Mists and Veils, it borders Mendev, but it also borders Brevoy. It's a big lake. The fun thing about this particular lake, though, and kind of how we tie into all of the history that just happened, one of Eredin's most famous miracles occurred here in 4433, which was when he defeated the growing cult of Discari the first time and drove the survivors and Daskari's avatar into the lake.
Oh, that's
so
why
this
Daskari
is the
hates.
origin story for the whole hot mess of the Worldwound.
Interesting.
Okay.
Of course, it's Aerodin.
Yeah.
And that is basically Mendev and the Sarkoris area, which is still rebuilding up. So we'll see where both of these areas go now that we're post-Crusade times.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Nice.
It always felt like 1E. It was like, Mendev, that's where the Crusade is.
Yeah, and 2E, it's like, Mendev, that's where the Crusade was.
So yeah, this is interesting. There's definitely other stuff going on.
Well, it's interesting to see what's going to happen, because not only is it just like a war ended, it's like a war with creatures that literally just warped the land itself. So it's not just like, oh, war ended, we got to rebuild. It's like war ended, and now it's like Chernobyl just happened or something.
Yeah, it's also still really bad.
There's a lot of like things that are still bad there. Just because you close the Worldwound doesn't mean that suddenly everything is fine and stuff will start growing again. There's like a lot of like work that has to go into restoring it. So it'll be interesting to see how that's handled.
Cool. Okay.
Nice.
Cool. Well, thank you, Sam. This has been a cool dive into Sarkoris and Mendev, and we're going to take a quick break, run a few ads, and then we'll be right back with campaigns and characters.
This is a public service announcement from the Mendev Local Authority. Although the Worldwound has been closed, the government is asking the public to remain vigilant when it comes to demons. There are a number of unaccounted for demons in the Sarkoris region. Especially if you are attempting to enter a previously inhabited demon area, we ask that you take precaution. Check your cupboards, check your cellars, check your wagons. If you find a demon, please do not attempt to fight it unless you actually have that skill set. If you find a demon and need emergency assistance, please call 1-800-CRUSADE. That's 1-800-CRUSADE. This has been a public service announcement from the Mendev Local Authority.
Thanks again to our sponsors, always reminding us that there are still demons that need to be cleansed from Mendev. And now Ryan with the campaign.
Okay. So I wanted to do a campaign that was not crusading.
What?
Shocking.
No. That's good, because I did not build a character for crusading.
So I really felt like that was a cop-out to be like, yes, we're going to go on the 6th crusade because something bad happened.
Ryan's like, I built a campaign. It's called Wrath of the Righteous.
My version. So, but I still find the intersection of like a post-war economy and all that stuff very interesting. So it's going to have lots of themes that tie back into the Crusades.
Okay.
So the players will be working at the Mendevian Crusader Museum and Memorial.
Ooh.
There's actually a place for this already. There's a city right on the border of the Sarkoris Scar and Mendev called Canabres.
Did you read about this city at all while you were...
Just barely. So Sam can tell me why this is a bad idea.
Well, no, I think it's great. I just didn't go too far into this city because it's a bit of a rabbit hole. But when we talked about the Third Crusades and like getting a little bit crazy with purifying the people, this is the site where they had the most issues. They were like burning people at the stake type of situation.
Which is, that sort of plays back in. So yeah. So it's called the Grey Garrison. And in lore, it's already established as like a place of Crusader knowledge and like a place of remembrance.
Yeah.
And it even calls out that there's aging curators there. So I gave a little bit of more detail to them. I made a couple human male, human female, like old paladins who are like overwatching the posts. They're keeping charge of the museum. But they realize they're like kind of on their last legs, and they maybe, I don't know if pine for the old days, but like they want to kind of revitalize the museum and make it a more important site. And for whatever reason, I didn't go this deep, but there's going to be a big visit of a bunch of heads of state, like probably like a 5-year anniversary of the end of the 5th Crusade or something, right? Like pick an arbitrary important date. And there's going to be, I figured you'd have like the head of state of all the countries that would have contributed a bunch of crusaders. So like what's her name over in Taldor?
Eutropia.
Maybe Princess Eutropia is going to come, and maybe Abigail Thrune II might like pick some heads of state who are going to arrive.
The Triune from Nidal.
Yeah. Well,
oh boy.
we didn't invite them. Why are they here?
How did they get here? Who let them in?
But yeah, so there's going to be a bunch of heads of state. And so the players are going to be asked with finding old Crusader sites, gathering histories of old battles, and building museum exhibits for the public. And also to impress these foreign dignitaries.
Yeah.
Of course, with a state visit, you were like looking to get foreign investment. You're looking to get resources from others to kind of help the nation understand its current problems and help it continue to springboard off just the crusade.
Yeah.
So there's like a couple different aspects of this campaign that I envisioned. Part of it was still like going out to old battlefields, going into the Scar, and either like recovering artifacts or at least gathering information about what happened at battle sites. I really liked the idea of spending time internally interviewing existing Crusaders and like building a mechanic around that where like you have to go find old war veterans and like get their take on the conflict and what happened, but then go to the battlefield and like kind of Sherlock Holmes and separate their experience from the actual information of whatever the battlefield is.
Ryan is just really setting himself up to do a lot of like intense acting in this campaign.
Which is a problem because I can't do that, but I like the idea of it. You're probably going to have direct confrontation with the Pathfinders, which I find interesting.
Ooh, yeah, because they're the artifact people and displayers of the world.
So I like the idea that Pathfinders are probably also nosing around and you have the absolute right to be like, excuse me, this is like our stuff.
Ooh.
You can't like take our things back to a Pathfinder lodge outside of Mendev. That's not right. And then I liked the idea that the two curators, the male and the female, I didn't give them a ton of detail, but I wanted the dichotomy that one of them is much more of like a glorify the war and one of them like wants a more realistic perspective of what it was. And like dealing with that dichotomy of like the glory part probably pulls in more feet and more foreign investment, but like you're not necessarily being truthful to the conflict and how all those things like intersect. And it, like Sam said, the city being a previous site of like the Inquisitions, there's just, I think that's a very fertile ground for like all kinds of weird human interactions of past history and future implication and how all those things interact.
That's very cool.
I inadvertently built the most perfect character
Let's go.
for this campaign.
Let's go.
So I did the random generator because I originally thought I was building the campaign and then I remembered, oh, no, Ryan's building the campaign. I need to build a character. So I did the random generator and I got a investigator.
Okay, perfect.
And I did uncommon ancestry. So I picked orc. And then I got lawful evil.
Oh, boy.
So the interesting thing here is Path Builder. When I opened it up to build him in Path Builder, it asked if I wanted to use the remaster rules.
Sure, of course.
Fine.
So I said yes. And so technically, I know orcs are now common, so I kind of broke the rules a little bit.
Fine.
It's fine. But the thing I kind of really liked is there is no alignment anymore.
Right.
So I took the lawful evil flavor and thought, okay, how would this go into edicts and anathema? So his edicts are everything can be a puzzle that needs solved.
Okay.
And pawns on a board are there to be sacrificed.
Oh, that's so cool.
Okay,
And his anathema is letting emotions get in the way of solid tactics.
Oh, man. This is great. Okay, so question, though. Were these edicts and anathemas that were provided to you, or did you get to build your own?
I built my own, yeah.
Oh,
I
love
like
it.
this.
So he was a crusader, a Mendevian crusader, who looked at the crusades as a place to kind of be strategic and win battles in ways that are like...
He's here to win the chess game.
Yeah, he's here to win the chess game. Like, I assume he's an orc, and his name is Arfel. And so he's probably from Belkzen, but Belkzen is too, like, let's go and overwhelm and fight. So he saw this as, like, demons are smart. Demons are, they're chaotic.
A worthy enemy.
Yeah, but a worthy enemy to try to, like, find the tactics in the chaos.
Yeah.
So he was part of the crusade, probably part of the 5th Crusade in some form. And afterwards, he's like, well, crap. What do I do? Because he is now, like, I know there's technically the finish the fight people, like they're still here, but it's not the same. It's kind of cleanup crew now that they're not as organized. The demons aren't like
right.
You know, the chess game is not as fulfilling as it was during the
Yeah,
Crusade.
there aren't masters making moves on the board. Now it's like you said, mop up.
Yeah, so I imagine now he's kind of like the evil, but like trying to find a new chess game. And so I can almost see him being like, oh, there's a way to still possibly go in and recover artifacts. He's very good at that as an investigator.
Sure.
To like possibly interview old crusades and almost play the new chess game against the Pathfinder Society.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think he would jump in there, and I don't know if he'd like care about the glorify the war versus like, I don't think he cares. I think he's here like the war was tactically won and we won that game.
He's more pragmatic about it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, but I think he'd end up on a side because he'd probably be like, well, what do I need to say to get more foreign investment into my thing, right?
Maybe. I honestly, he might just be like, here's what actually happened. I imagine he would fight with the glory person to be like, no, the demons in this one were very tactically sound and like beat us, but we countered afterwards with whatever. And it's like instead of the glory would be like, we routed the demons, they're like, actually, in this area, the demons did a very good routing of the Mendevian Crusaders.
If you look at their detailed tactics, it was really brilliant if you really think about it.
Yeah. So yeah, I imagine that he would fit right in and kind of just be the, I'm here for this chess match. And then he might get like very particular about how the things are set up. Like, what's the perfect way, like you said, the perfect way to set up these different exhibits to get the most bang for your buck in foreign investments.
Well, so I didn't say this before, but I like sketched some stuff on the back of a notebook paper real quick. There would definitely be like almost like a Zoo Tycoon component where like crafting checks and previous information, you could like pick which exhibits go next to which other exhibits for like adjacency bonuses. And...
Nice. Yeah. So he would 100% be like, yes, hands behind his back, walking around like, that does fit very well next to here. That pawn is ready to be moved. Everyone's like, it's an exhibit. He's like, it's so much more. You just see the exhibit. I see the whole board.
I love him already.
Yes, Marfel.
Oh, this is good. Okay.
Man, this is a cool campaign. I like that.
I like this.
Nice.
So this is the problem. We keep saying this is the problem.
Yeah, but this would be it. Well, this is Ryan's next one. Ryan, write it.
I could write this.
Yeah.
This could be my next one. I definitely, man, like Sam said, this would be a lot of character acting.
This would be a lot of character. Sam
would need...
Sam could be your co-GM.
There we go.
I'll just be your random NPCs.
Yeah.
Which every session, Sam is just my co-GM playing 3 NPCs.
This will be just like when I was in graduate school and you had to do like role play of therapy sessions. And like I got asked once, are you really upset? No, you told me to be someone who came to therapy upset about something. So obviously I am crying. Why are the rest of you slacking in your acting?
I am an actor.
Every time.
Awesome.
That's
okay.
good work.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have our campaigns, we have our characters. So before we leave, where do we rate Mendev? On a scale of 1 to 5.
1 to 5. Inquisition seems inappropriate.
Crusades? 1 to 5.
Maybe we use the ward stones.
Ooh, 1 to 5
ward stones. I like that. Yeah.
Cool.
That's a slightly more positive takeaway.
I feel like I'd put this pretty low, even in a post-Worldwound world. I feel like this is a high-risk travel area.
This feels like exactly what I think it is, right? Like a war-torn nation with probably poor infrastructure.
Yeah.
Rough government control of areas and like general danger.
Yeah, I'd put this at like 1 wardstone out of 5.
See, I think I'm going to go 2 because I think the historical stuff with it also sounds really cool. So for me as a traveler, like, I don't know, I would like to learn the history and I think it would be neat to see some of the things. I don't know that I want to like stick around and I'm not necessarily there for like fun sightseeing. But
this I kind of agree with too. This feels kind of like parts of Europe post World War II or something, or World War I. Like it's bad, but there's definitely still like things that are going on that are good and interesting. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think 2 is
Okay.
the right number.
Okay. So 2 out of 5 ward stones.
2 out of 5 ward stones.
I like it.
I like it. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you guys. This has been awesome. And thanks again to all of our listeners. If you're enjoying the podcast, let your friends know. I'm a weird lurker on Reddit, and I've seen a couple people recommend our podcast on comments, which, I don't know, you feel like you kind of made it when you're not the one in a comment like, have you heard about our podcast? So,
It's fair. It's fair.
so if you're doing that, if you see people asking podcasts, if you recommend us,
Sweet.
we appreciate it. If you want to reach out to us, hit us up on Instagram at Tabletop Travel Guide. You can always email us at tabletoptravelguidepodcast@gmail.com. Remember, go to our website for pictures and characters and other stuff. And we do have our map up there now of where we're going.
Yep.
So you can see, which episode corresponds to which area of the map. And like we said at the top of the episode, there's the option to go to our Patreon as well. So feel free to hit that up. And
From here, since we are reaching the almost end of 2023, we're going to have a special wrap up for the year where we kind of revisit the places we've been. So that'll be our last episode for 2023. But then we will, once we get into 2024, we'll jump back into the Broken Lands and continue to talk about all the fun places there.
yeah, so join us in 2 weeks. We will still probably have maybe a Tabletop Finds episode next week. But in 2 weeks, we'll have our top places to go recommended by Tabletop Travel Guide in 2023. So we'll see you then. And until next time, safe travels.